We go to the phones and visit with Republican strategist, our good friend Matt Mackowiak. Matt, good morning. How's it going today?
Oh, pretty good, Chad. How you doing?
Doing all right. There's a lot to get into, and we'll start off with some of the big national news. Yesterday, the former Vice President Joe Biden officially now is in the race, gave a big speech in Pennsylvania yesterday. I tend to believe that as of right now, he is probably the best positioned to take on President Trump in a general election, but I don't know if he can make it through a Democrat primary. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I've been describing Biden that same exact way over the last, 3 or 6 months. We're going to see whether he can withstand, questions about his policy views over 3 decades, and whether he's progressive enough to be nominated by the modern Democratic Party. He's not really a Democrat that fits the kind of what the party's looking for right now. His strongest argument is electability. And, the question is going to be whether Democratic primary voters think he's the only Democrat that can beat Trump or think he's the best Democrat to take on Trump. Right now, I think a lot of the polling is reflecting name identification. It's not, I don't think primary voters have really had a chance to get to know a lot of the candidates yet. I think they know Bernie and I think they know Biden, but that's probably about it. So, we're going to be getting into debates, televised debates starting in June, and the race is going to start to settle in, and we'll start to get a better sense of it. But, look, Biden's had a good 3 or 4 days. Raised $6 million in the first 24 hours, got through his launch. He was in Pittsburgh yesterday, kind of kicking off the campaign. We'll see where it goes. I think he's got certainly a decent chance, as good as anyone else, to be the nominee, but we'll see. I mean, things are going to change, and they're going to change quickly.
Is it over for Beto? You keep seeing these stories that come out that, Buttigieg has stolen Beto's thunder, that the media, the shine has kind of worn off of Beto O'Rourke, but the guy could still raise money, I guess, but it just seems like his momentum has all but gone away.
So I would agree that his momentum has definitely stalled. I probably can't say at this moment that it's quote over. I don't think it's over really probably for anyone who's in the top 6 or 7 right now. It's still early enough. Things are going to change. I think what's clear is that initial burst of huge attention and momentum that he had when he announced was just not sustainable. I mean, number one, he didn't really have a campaign to sustain it. Number two, he really wasn't ready as a candidate to sustain it. He's been getting quite a bit of flack over the last couple of months for really having almost no substance on policy. So yesterday he unveiled his climate plan, which is going to cost, I forget, $4 or $5 trillion. Just an astounding amount of money. So, look, I think he's definitely lost momentum. I don't really kind of see where he fits in the Democratic primary right now. We'll see how he does. I just think at the end of the day, he's not going to measure up. I think I just think Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders are far more likely to be the nominee. Even Pete Buttigieg probably at this point is more likely than Beto. But you're right. I mean, look, the fact that he raised $9 million in the first quarter, he's going to have the resources to stay in this thing through the first 4 early states. But he's got to find a path to becoming a first-year candidate with a long-term, path to becoming the nominee. And right now he hasn't established that.
So last week we talked about the race for Texas Senate and with Senator Cornyn and MJ Hager announcing. We still haven't heard anything from Joaquin Castro, and I think many are kind of coming around to what you had said last week, Matt, that he's probably not running. That this idea that he was going to drop everything and drop his position in the House, the fact that he's just waiting and not saying anything. To me, more and more people are coming around to what you said last week. How do you think last week went for the Cornyn camp when they were kind of reacting to MJ Hager?
I thought it went fine. I think the proof will be in the pudding in terms of how much attention and money she raised, in the first few days. I thought Cornyn's team did fine trying to define her as a sort of a Hollywood-supported liberal candidate. We'll see. I think this thing's just getting started. I think she's going to have trouble scaling up to becoming a statewide candidate. I don't think she's going to raise, as much money as I think Democrats think she will. It's a much busier election cycle. There's just more action in more places. It's pretty clear the National Democrats wanted her to be the candidate over Joaquin Castro, which is interesting. I guess they wanted a woman. I guess they thought she could raise money. You know, one of the most puzzling things about Joaquin Castro is, you know, if you were actively and aggressively exploring a race for a statewide race for the United States Senate, what you would do is you would, you know, take that interest and that potential and that buzz and raise money in the first quarter. More money than you would raise as a, you know, member of Congress. You'd raise it almost as basically as a statewide candidate. Number one, you can, you know, use that money in the future even if you don't run. But number two, you want to see what's out there. And Joaquin Castro's fundraising quarter was a disaster. I think he raised 60 or 70 grand. You know, freshman members of Congress in the minority raised $250 easily, and he's raising less than that as a more senior member on an A committee on House Intel in the majority. And he's only got like 80 or 85 grand in the bank. So you know, based on every way I know to evaluate whether a candidate is really going to run for something or not, all the indications are that Joaquin's not going to run for U.S. Senate. I mean, even last week you saw there were two stories, one in the Texas Tribune that Abby Livingston did, and then another that I saw over the weekend in the Austin American-Statesman, kind of detailing Democratic frustration with Joaquin Castro's indecision about running for Senate, the fact that he's sort of squandered the potential to be the candidate, that he just really isn't giving anyone any feedback. There was a quote from a Democratic member of Congress from Texas named Philemon Vela from South Texas, who's pretty frustrated. So I don't really understand what Joaquin is doing. He's sort of leaving the potential out there that he would run, but he's doing nothing to take the steps he would need to take. And now he's let a losing congressional candidate get ahead of him and appear to be the choice of the Democratic Party. It's absolutely mystifying.
Yeah, I'm visiting with Matt Mackowiak. Before we let you go, Matt, when you're looking at the Texas Legislature, obviously today is going to be a lot about property taxes in the House. What are your thoughts on that battle that's shaping up today, and any other legislation that you're looking at that you think listeners should be interested in?
Yeah, look, the whole ballgame here is property tax and school finance. It has been from the beginning. The big three have talked about that over and over and over again. You know, the House kind of held out on property tax until they felt confident that the Senate was not going to bottle up school finance, and they've sort of, I think, done enough to make the House feel comfortable. So it's a bit of a trade. The House wants school finance. The Senate wants property tax reform. It looks like they're going to have a 2.5% cap on school districts and a 3.5% cap on everything else in terms of reducing the rollback rate. We'll see whether that gets to the House, what amendments pass, what the final vote looks like. But that's my expectation. And, there's a good chance here with 25 or 28 days left they can avoid a special session and get the big items addressed, which is really what everyone's been focused on.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, as always, we appreciate your time. Tell folks how they can sign up for your newsletter and who your guest was on your podcast.
Yeah, the newsletter is called Must Read Texas. We've got 3,000 Texans that receive it every weekday morning. We take all the news from around the state of Texas, put it in one clean email, send it to you each weekday morning. You can sign up for a free one-week trial at mustreadtexas.com. The podcast is called Mac on Politics. It's available in the iTunes Store, on Google Play, Stitcher, and Spotify. And the most recent episode, which just posted yesterday morning, is with United States Senator Mike Lee, Republican of Utah.
Very nice. Very nice. Matt, as always, appreciate your time. We'll visit with you later on.
Sounds good. Take care.
Thank you. That's Matt Mackowiak here on the Chad Hasty Show. We'll take our break. When we come back, your phone calls and more.